Hi, Phil Hundl here with a quick pipeline update, and this is on Targa's Grand Prix Speedway project. There are landowners receiving initial offer letters, and so I wanted to go into that in a little bit more detail and some things to remember when you're analyzing and reviewing this initial offer, and particularly the proposed easement and the plat, and to the extent in the plat to evaluating and understanding the scope of the project. Now, this video, I'm going to jump from this video to a screenshot where I'm going to be talking through some of the different aspects of the initial offer packet. Now, the video is a little bit longer than my other videos. Maybe we'll cut it up into two sections, but with that, I want you to be able to use this information to better understand exactly where we're at in the process with the Speedway pipeline project of Targa's. All right, I'm going to jump right into it. As we discussed before on various other pipeline project alerts, this is the Targa's Speedway pipeline project. It's also referred to as Grand Prix, but it's the Speedway Grand Prix project. And to start out, what are we talking about again? This is the red dotted line on the illustration. This illustration, and I'll link it in the blog, you'll be able to get to it and read more about it, but this is a PowerPoint presentation that Targa put on to their investors in November 2025. So it's very recent. It's got information about the project, talking about the type of products that it will be allowed to transport, and we'll talk about that once we jump into the proposed easement agreement and then also their attached plat. So if you're a landowner affected by this project, you will or you have already received an initial offer packet or initial offer letter with an attached easement, proposed easement agreement, and proposed compensation. And so I want to dive into that and talk about that. But once again, I'm going to attach information about this project. It's out there in the public domain. Just for example, this was a statement put out by Targa September 30th, 2025. And then also another map of some of their projects that Targa has in the Texas and surrounding areas. With that, I'm going to jump into, I have redacted this document because to keep a level of privacy, and it's irrelevant for purposes that we're talking about today is what county this is in or what landowners affected. But what I want to point out, and the whole purpose of this video is, there are some things that you as a landowner should be aware of and familiar about. And so let's just dive right into this. Is the first page of their proposed easement agreement. And always, I'm going to point out things that you should be paying attention to and thinking about, and then also going and talking to an attorney that specializes in representing landowners facing eminent domain or a condemnation proceeding. But one of the first things, and I'm going to see if I can play around with some of my technology here, but I'm going to use the red and see if I can draw. We always want to say, how wide is this pipeline easement? And they are wanting 50 foot wide. This easement is limited. They have limited it themselves to a single pipe, so that's very good. There are easements sometimes proposed that are proposing multiple pipelines or two pipelines. Also, we always want to check and see about the diameter of the pipeline, and they are saying that their diameter will not exceed 30 inches. So that's something also that is important and we want to pay attention to. Where we have the gotchas, and you have to be careful, is where it talks about a pipeline and any appurtenant facilities. That can cause problems, be very problematic, and that's something that you definitely need to speak to your attorney about, to talk about what exactly that means, what it could mean on your property, and how to limit that. One thing about this, we also look at the temporary construction easement. Most of the time what we see is 2 years, 24 months. Here, they're only asking for 12 months. That's refreshing. Does it take 24 months for a pipeline company to start construction, commence, and finish restoration? I would hope not, and typically, no, it does not, or it should not. And so I'm glad that Targa is limiting theirs to 12 months, and hopefully it wouldn't take that long on your property. Some other things that we want to roll through here and look at, see if I can get rid of that, is what can or will they be transporting in this pipeline? Oftentimes we'll see just natural gas or crude oil, but here, this is one of those where it is very broad. And so something that catches our attention is they have a very broad rights on what they can transport through this pipe. And so that's something that will need to be discussed also with your attorney. And then these other things that can happen on your property, be it, once again, above ground or below ground, all types of other appurtenances, and those are things that you really need to discuss and, to the extent you can, limit this. Now, what always makes me nervous is when words like what are necessary or desirable. There's a very big difference between what is necessary or required by law, right? State law, federal law, or what is desirable. And I think desirable obviously creates a lot more wiggle room and flexibility for Targa or the Condemnation pipeline company. Lots of other provisions in this easement agreement. I'm not going to go through them. Absolutely something that you need to know, understand, and if any questions that you have, you need to have those questions answered. I wanted to really look at the plat. As I've said, I've redacted some things out of here, but what I always encourage everyone to do is look and study the plat and understand what the scope of the project is on your property. This is the subject property right here. Let me go ahead and get my little ink again. So this is the subject property, and the area we want to really pay attention to is right here. And we want to pay attention to the legend, and we want to look and see what exactly is going to be happening on this property. Is it going to be just permanent easement area, or is it going to be temporary workspace? I specifically wanted to show this plat because on this particular plat, at least right now, it appears that this property is only going to be affected with a permanent easement. And now, once again, not to say that's going to be a good thing. Yes, it's still a 50-foot wide easement that's going to encumber and burden the landowner's property, but oftentimes we will see also temporary easement areas, basically going off the legend hatched like that. And then also, it's also possible to see additional temporary workspaces that are hatched in this other fashion, double hatched. It can ultimately end up taking up a lot of the property. If this is wooded property, then if this is wooded property here, then timber and whatnot, shrubbery will be taken out and destroyed, in addition to the stuff that's in the permanent easement areas. Also, pay attention to this area here. It talks about the number of rods that will be, and also feet here that'll be on this L1 essentially. It can be L1, L2, all kinds of things, but this is where you would look to see. And you need to look at L1 and make sure that L1 matches up with what they're saying the length is of the center line. And then also the amount of area taken in the permanent easement area. And normally it's going to be in square feet and acres. And that's a measurement of area. And then also, once again, if there is going to be some temporary workspace or additional temporary workspace, that would be set out here, and it's not. Also, if there would be a permanent access road, then you may see something called a PAR. There's a temporary access road, a TAR, and then also if you see references to SS or surface site, then that would be a potential above ground surface site next to the pipeline easement potentially, or in other places. Once again, the point of this was to run through this and hopefully get you familiar with what this is all about. I want to also show, there's been questions sometimes about what are natural gas liquids, and so I found this real helpful chart from the U.S. Energy Information Administration talking about NGLs, and it's hydrocarbons that, and this gets into a lot of chemistry, but hydrocarbons that obviously contain carbon and hydrogen. So here's some of the things that could be included in the products that are transported in this pipeline, from ethane, propane, butane, isobutane, pentane. Just once again, I think information is power, being aware of what's happening related to this project and the scope of the project on your property, I think is extremely helpful. So with that, good luck, and once again, look to the blog for additional information on the project, and any questions that you may have, you can find that listed on the frequently asked questions section. And everyone, a quick reminder, I always want to point this out, but it's worth mentioning here. At what stage are we at in the condemnation process? And I always like to point out and say we are at step 1 or step 2. And you all, as a landowner on this Targa project, you were contacted way back when about survey access, which is really step 0, asking for survey access. But now they've provided you with this initial offer, which included also the Bill of Rights. So we're on the Targa project. If you're a landowner and you've received this initial offer, we are at the stage 2. And next, you can expect within 30 days or so the final offer. So nothing to be surprised about. You can anticipate receiving a final offer letter. And now, once you receive the initial offer, now is a very good time, if you haven't already, to contact an attorney that handles eminent domain cases so that you can talk to them about the things that we've already mentioned today.